Hello, everyone, and welcome to the meeting of May 22nd. We're going to jump right in here, and I'm going to hand it off to Kathy for announcements.
Thank you, Eve. Just wanted to share that 3 of our club members this past Saturday participated in the district spring training session, and we had a blast. It was really fun. Eve, Lonnie Irvin, and myself were there, and it was just a really fun, informative networking event. We heard from our district governor-elect, Donna, about her plans and our plans for a very successful 2018 and 19. And there were all sorts of breakout sessions. So whether you're a club secretary, treasurer, assistant governor, president-elect, president nominee, there were just wonderful breakout sessions with lots of good information to share. So we had a really fun time. There were also breakout sessions on fundraising, membership, public image, things that every club can use and take back to their club. So we had a really, really good time. One of the fun things for me too, it was Lonnie's first time attending a meeting, and he really, you could see it on his face how excited he was. So that was really good to share because it is exciting to go to the spring training sessions. So I'd like to encourage everyone next time, if you can go, please sign up. Also, Rhonda's presidential installation banquet is going to be held at the PNC Arena on June 20th at 6:15. It's a great time for us to show our eClub support by attending the event. So there'll be additional registration information that will follow and drop into inboxes. So please stay tuned for that. If you like barbecue, and I think everyone does, get ready for the 7th annual Bone Suck and Sauce Peak City Pig Fest, which is happening in June, and it's presented by the Apex Sunrise Rotary Foundation. The Bone Suck and Sauce Peak City Pig Fest will be held on June 15th and 16th in historic downtown Apex, North Carolina. The Bone Suck and Sauce Peak City Pig Fest is the Triangle's only. I know, thank you, I will. But it is the only KCBS, which is the Kansas City Barbecue Sauce sanctioned barbecue competition. So this is it's a very big deal. For more information on the Bone Suck and Sauce Pig City Pig Fest, or to volunteer, because they do need some volunteers, please visit the www.pigcitypigfest.com. And that, of course, will be sent out in the weekly announcements. But it's a great time. They expect lots of people that will converge in downtown Apex, which is really a cool place. So you would have fun whether you're volunteering or just going down to check it out. Please mark your calendars to join us on June 21st. It's our year-end celebration and ice cream social at the Parlor. It's at 117 Market Street in Durham. Additional details will follow in our weekly announcements. This will be our last official gathering of the 2017-2018 Rotary year, as President Eve and President-elect Rhonda will be in Toronto. MG will also be attending the annual Rotary Conference in Toronto as well. So that'll be really great to have 3 of our club members attending the Rotary International Conference. As for upcoming meetings, Mika's with us tonight as the Riverside High School Teacher of the Year. And next week on May 29th, Olive Joyner will be from the Durham Housing Authority, will be our guest speaker. June 5th, the program will be is to be determined. June 12th, Tim Maddox, past district governor, will be talking to us about understanding the importance of the Rotary Foundation. June 19th, there'll be no Tuesday program, but we will install President-elect Rhonda and recognize outgoing President Eve, as well as past Presidents Jeanne and Kevin on that Thursday, June 21st, at our annual ice cream social. We are counting this event as a meeting and hope that everyone will be able to attend. This will be our last official meeting again in 2017-2018 Rotary year. Does anyone else have any announcements? No? Well, I will turn it right back over to Eve.
Great, thank you. I did want to put in a plug for Apex, the big Rotary sponsored barbecue event. I heard a lot about it at the fundraising session that I was participating in, and they said that the first couple of years they didn't actually make any money, and so this was kind of a lesson in how to run an event, and they kept kind of honing it and working to make it better. And now I think they bring in about $30,000. So it's a really big event that took a little while for them to kind of get all worked out, but it's a really big partnership too. And so anyway, it was one of those kind of interesting fundraising examples that they used. And since I'll be kind of transitioning to fundraising chair next year, I'll be hopefully learning something from from them. And I also got a long list of fundraising just ideas and strategies for next year. So while I haven't done a great job fundraising this year, hopefully next year I'll make up for it. So and I look forward to hearing everybody's ideas as we go forward. So on that note, I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Kevin to do the introduction. And I don't have to hit record because we've already hit record. And thank you everyone for being here again this evening. And thank you, Mika. So Kevin, over to you. Oh, you're muted.
Boom. Tonight, we have the opportunity to hear from Mika Twietmeyer, who was recently, as of last week, named Durham Public Schools Teacher of the Year. And if I were a betting man, I would have been a really rich person. Mika's been teaching science at Riverside High School since 2008. She is a nationally board certified teacher and is the science content instructor for the Master of Arts in Teaching program at Duke University. Mika is an active member of the Durham Association of Educators and an NC Teacher Voice Fellow. She was recognized as the Teacher of the Year at Durham Public Schools for 2019, which was very confusing for me because I was looking up the Teacher of the Year for 2018 nominees. I was like, what? Huh? But apparently, we pay it forward somehow in Durham. Teacher of the Year for 2019. After teaching for several years in Durham, Mika realized that the needs of her students extended outside of her classroom, and she needed to get involved in advocacy to make positive changes. She enjoys knitting, gardening, and spending time with her educator husband and school improvement team co-chair, John Twietmeyer, and 2 cats. Mika, thanks for being with us tonight.
Thank you all for having me. It's an honor. I was telling Eve and Kathy, this is my first official thing I'm doing as Durham's Teacher of the Year. So you guys, get my rough draft of my speeches. But I'm going to share my screen with you now. Is that okay? I have a PowerPoint that has lots of pictures because everybody just likes pictures in presentations, to tell you a little bit about what I do and some of the groups that I'm involved with that I think might be of interest to you and is it Rotarians? It sounds like an animal. Yeah, a little bit about how the events of last week went, which there were some really big events in North Carolina for sure. So let me share my screen. And can everybody see that? Let's see.
Yep, we can see
Okay.
it.
I want to, okay, because it just goes to full presentation on my end, but I can't see everybody's faces anymore when I do that. So maybe I can just make this really big. Would that be okay?
That's fine.
Okay, because I like seeing your faces. I like having a little bit of an audience. Okay, so a little bit about me that you guys already heard a little bit. So teaching is actually my second career. I graduated in 2003 with a bachelor's of biology and entomology from the University of Maryland. and graduated in 2008 with my master's from Duke University, and I've been in Durham ever since. I teach science at Riverside High School, and I've had my whole teaching career there. Before I was a teacher, I worked at the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency as a biologist in Washington, D.C. I always thought about teaching, but I knew I kind of wanted to practice some science first before I got into the classroom. Like Kevin said, I also teach teachers how to teach, and most recently was awarded a future role as the 2019 Teacher of the Year. And these are just some pictures of some things I like to do with my students. Our school is right by the Eno River, so I get the opportunity to take them to the Eno anytime I want. This is a picture of me and my student Wilden, who was incarcerated for most of his senior year of high school, and I'll talk on some advocacy work that I was involved with him. And then that's me and my husband, John, who's a photography teacher at Riverside. So just also to kind of set the tone, my vision for education is, I wrote it here for you guys and you can see it. But I really want my students to have authentic experiences in the classroom. I want educators to be a part of every decision that's made about education. And I want every student to have access to that prepares them for whatever future they want. And that last part, we know as high school teachers, we're charged with preparing our students for college and career, but only 60% of high school graduates in North Carolina go on to college. And right now we know there's a big workforce gap. There's not enough people joining the skilled workforce, so we're not doing something right, which I'll talk about later. And most of all, I put as this caption of this photo from last Wednesday, I hope we don't have to do that anymore. I hope thousands of teachers don't have to descend on the Capitol and ask to fully fund our schools. That's my vision. I also have my social media shared here. I have a Twitter that my maiden name is Hunter, and it was really hard to change all the things to my new last name. So that's why it still says Hunter. And some articles that I've written. And that's my email for anybody that wants to email me. So a lot of you guys are familiar with Durham, and we have a teacher from Durham, but just some stats. And there's a lot of students in Durham, and in Durham Public Schools, and they don't necessarily match up with the racial breakdown of the city. So for example, you can see here that only about 19% of the students in Durham Public Schools are white, which is a lot less than the overall dynamics of the city. 63% are on free and reduced lunch. We have a little over 2,000 teachers, and if you double that, that's support staff and everybody else that works in a school building. We're great. We have a great supportive school board. We have a supportive and progressive mayor and city government. This was a picture of me from Wednesday. I stumbled upon our mayor of Durham and some of our awesome elected officials. And in Durham right now, we do have a new superintendent who's planning to make some changes that I think will be important for parents to keep tabs on. So teaching in Durham is great. Teaching in North Carolina is a little bit more of a challenge. And I know this audience probably knows a lot of this, and I just summarized some of the points here. But up until the 2000s, North Carolina was one of the top half states for education funding. And since then, since 2008, actually my first year I started teaching, I was on a pay freeze for 6 years. And you can imagine a lot of my classmates and teachers that started at that time didn't stay for 6 years to wait to see what was going to happen. We've lost over 7,000 teaching assistants since that time. Veteran teachers talk of a teacher's assistant in every classroom K through 5. And that's definitely not the norm anymore. And most recently, last year, the General Assembly instituted a new pay scale for principals that is tying test scores to principal pay. Oops, sorry about that. And some principals are going to make about $30,000 less this year due to some of those legislative changes, which you can imagine doesn't make some people very happy. So with regards to the funding, if my school was funded at the national average, just the national average, my school would get $4 million more every year of funding. In Durham, it's about $2,000 more a student. So I just did a calculation of 1,900 students times 2,000. And this is just a picture of one of the structures outside my classroom that obviously you can't walk up the stairs anymore. It's a mobile classroom or a trailer. You might be familiar with them. So all of this being said, there's a lot of teachers that aren't giving up. And there's a lot of people in Durham and North Carolina, especially recently, that are becoming maybe first-time activists. And does anyone have any questions at this point? I know there was a question time at the end, but if anyone has a question, feel free to jump in.
I'll just remind everyone that you're muted, so if you have a question, just unmute yourself.
Okay, so the first group, like Kevin said, that I'm involved in is the Durham Association of Educators, and they're our NCAE, National Education Association affiliate. And, you know, it's a union, right? And we're in a right to work state, which means that we can't negotiate contracts, but it doesn't mean that we can't have a union. So a lot of people think that unions are illegal in right to work states, and they're not, right? Police officers join the Teamsters unions. They're not illegal. It's just we can't negotiate contracts. Although in Durham, we just negotiated the custodian contract to actually bring all custodians back into Durham Public Schools instead of having them be contractors. So in some cases, we do negotiate contracts. And one of the great things about the Durham Association of Educators is that, you know, also a lot of the narrative around unions is like they keep bad teachers in teaching and they just want higher salaries. And that's not really our focus. I mean, of course, teachers would like a salary increase and we want to protect our due process rights, which were stripped away from us a couple of years ago. But we really have a social justice mindset because we know if our students, most of which are poor, don't have what they need, we can't teach them. And we know if we can support our students, that we'll, in the long run, be supporting our teachers. And most teachers have students in the schools, so they're supporting their own children. One of the things that we've had some great success in is working with our elected officials in Durham. And we've really led the way on some initiatives that have taken footing across the state. For example, a couple years ago, the General Assembly wanted school districts to identify the top 25% of teachers in their districts and give them pay increases. And we started a campaign, it was called the Decline to Sign campaign, where we actually had school boards saying, no, we're not gonna make our principals decide who gets a raise in that sort of way. We also recently, a couple years ago, passed a specific free speech resolution, and I'm going to be doing a little webinar on this. There's a lot of intimidation, not in Durham, but across the state, by superintendents and principals about teachers speaking out about things. And I think teachers don't understand that we still have like free speech and there's a constitution that's like the same in every county. But Durham went a step ahead and said that if you were speaking out about conditions at your school or issues that were important to you, that there could not be retaliation. And Durham also reinstated due process. And one of the most important things that I'll focus on next is protecting the sanctity of our schools, and putting some processes in place that make it harder for ICE, which is Immigrations and Custom Enforcement Officers, to come into our schools and basically arrest undocumented students. So making policies that protect the schoolhouse as a safe space for everybody to come and learn, which is what they're there for. And that brings me to definitely one of the best projects I've ever worked on in my teaching career. So this young man here is Wilden Acosta. He was a student in my ESL biology class, which is a class for non-native speakers. And January of his senior year of high school, he was arrested between his front door and his car in his driveway by immigration and taken to Stewart, Georgia. This picture here is when we went to visit him. It's CCA, which is like the Correctional Corporation of America. It's a private prison for only immigrants. That's the only reason why those people are jailed in there. So he was detained and put in prison for over 6 months. And I put kind of here, I know it's kind of some funny bullet points, but it was really a community collaboration. It was a teachable moment for the students at Riverside, because we have pictures here of the woman right here in the blazer. That's Ellen Holmes. She's a teacher at Riverside, but everyone else is a student. Axel's at Duke. They went to Congress. They started a relationship with G.K. Butterfield's office and really started a community campaign to bring awareness to what was happening. And of course, you know, there's definitely different, immigration is not an easy topic to talk to a lot of people. It's complicated by design. But when we were doing our advocacy, we really focused on the fact that everyone should be able to come to school if they want to, and Wilden's education was being taken away from him. Because while you're in a private detention facility, you can't get any papers from your teachers. There's no tutors in there. It's very isolating. And also at that time, there was quite a few other students that were detained in North Carolina, and there was some really shady things happening, and students were taken at the bus stop waiting for their buses in Charlotte. And a lot of our students were scared. So we had about 20% of our student body absent the week that this happened, because students were afraid to come to school. And one of the things that we really worked hard on, and especially passing, policies about who can come into school, is making sure that school is a safe place for everybody. So, I could give a whole weekend seminar on all the things that we did to advocate for Wilden's release. But in the long run, he was released. He was able to finish his final semester of high school and get his college diploma. And just some of the pictures, we started some really intense social media campaigns with people. Those little pictures are all people from across the county holding up signs saying they want Wilden back. This is me and my colleague, Brian Christopher, who teaches journalism at one of Wilden's court trials after he was released. But this is a great success story. It's not to say that I haven't had students that have been deported. And most recently, a father from the City of Medicine Academy was deported back to Africa after he had been in the US for about 20 years. And I mean, it's a scary thing that a lot of our students face, and especially right now with the uncertainty surrounding immigration legislation. A lot of students, everyone in their family might have a slightly different immigration status. Like some of the older kids might be considered dreamers and they might not know what their status is going to be. Their parents might be undocumented. It's something that I face with my students every day, and it's something that I have to be very aware of. So for example, a lot of students are really hesitant to give you their home information or their address. Like, on the first day of school, I usually give a piece of paper that says like, what's your address? What are your parents' names? And a lot of students are really hesitant to provide any of that information because, they see school as it's a government thing, right? And they don't want that information being used for the wrong way. Any questions about that? I'm sure everyone has, maybe not. I assume a lot of people have heard about Wilden's story.
And what is Wilden's status now? Is he, I know he's not quote unquote legal, but is he free to do what he wants to do right now? Not
totally. There is going to be a period of time where he has to go back to Honduras and come back. So it was, kind of not an immediate win, but a success story. And while he was still in school, he had a couple other protections. But I've gone to several of his court dates, and just the complexity of the system and how backlogged they are. I mean, they said they see hundreds of cases every day, this one judge in Charlotte, and they plan, the court dates 6 months in 6 month, sessions. So you have to wait all that time. It's not a speedy process. But yeah, he is still living in Durham with his family.
Mika, do you have any idea what the supply of immigration attorneys who are available to help students and their families in Durham?
That's another tricky thing too. And actually part of the problems with Wilden's trial is there were some lawyers at the beginning that took advantage of his family and took money from the family, and it didn't work out. Wilden and his younger sister probably have the best English skills, but his parents don't speak a lot of English. And you can imagine when you're signing documents and handing over cashier's checks, you trust that they're going to do the right thing. I can get back to you on some lawyers. We recommend a couple different lawyers, and I just want to check with my colleague, Ellen, to make sure that those are still the ones that we recommend. I think it will be an interesting situation in Durham, especially with the new sheriff that's coming in, because the old sheriff definitely was partnering up with ICE and doing traffic stops and that kind of stuff. And I think it will be interesting to see how that dynamic shifts. Of course, I saw there's going to be a runoff for the sheriff in Durham, but I can definitely get back to you. We usually direct people to El Centro, which is a good resource. They have money for Dreamer applications usually when those were open, because it costs about $500 to $1,000 to apply every year for your status as a Dreamer. So yeah, I'll get that info for you guys.
Thank you.
So in my intro, Kevin said, I realized that being a teacher just wasn't enough for my students. and for education in North Carolina. And so I do involve myself in some outside groups like the Association of Educators, and we call ourselves the group that works on, we kind of have like a undocumented triage team. We call ourselves the immigrant justice team. And we, you know, when students are picked up or students' parents are picked up, we're on a big email list, and we get advice to people. Like, for example, there was some middle school students whose parents were picked up, and the kids just kept going to school. And of course, who was the one that realized what was happening was the teacher, and trying to support those students that their parents were already detained. So one of the advocacy things that I work on, or a group that I work with, is called the Hope Street Group. And there's a fellowship called the North Carolina Teacher Voice Fellowship, which is a policy fellowship. And it includes a lot of data collection and data in the sense of teacher narratives and teacher experiences. And there's a network of about 20 of us across the state, all in very different districts. And we are tasked with expanding our PLN, which that acronym is Professional Learning Networks. And the people in the pictures here, that's Representative Craig Horn, who's on the education committee. So me and some other fellows meeting with him. This is Mr. Coltrane and LaTanya Patillo. These are the governor's education advisors. And Jeff actually is a Durham person. His kids go to, I think, Githens. He used to teach at Science and Math. So this is one avenue, and a lot of the writing that I link to I've done through this group, because they really focus on having teachers share their experience. And since we don't often get asked by decision makers when they're making decisions to really elevate teacher voice as much as possible and actually have some data when we are writing. One of the best things I've done this calendar year, is get involved with Save Our Schools NC, which has been the group behind the class size chaos battle, which the class size chaos refers to an unfunded mandate to lower class sizes in elementary school, which was going to basically require classes. I think Durham was going to need something like 50 new classrooms, and they were going to get rid of art and gym and all that kind of awesome stuff that's supposed to happen in school. So this is a parent group that I'm involved with that if you guys don't know about, you guys should really tap into. We held a really big rally in February on one of the coldest days of the year, and we still got some people to come, which was great. Right now we have a temporary fix for the class size bill, but one of the things I found as an educator, and maybe less so now after last week, but a lot of people don't want to listen to the teachers, but they are, and people meaning legislators and people that make the decisions. But when parents start really pushing back and asking questions, a lot gets done. And this Facebook group, they're also on a Facebook group. They have a ton of followers and have been working really hard to just, the leaders are just super smart, making sense of this legislation that's really hard to, break down, and providing it to people so they know what the issues are. So if you don't know about them, I highly recommend. They're a great group of people to work with and just get involved. Are you guys familiar with the North Carolina Justice Center? And like NC Policy Watch is their publication. So they have a gala every year, and the founder of Save Our Schools, Renee Seckel, is getting the award for like grassroots organizing, which is really awesome. Another group that I am involved in is Red for Ed NC. which was founded by Angie Scioli and is the reason why we all wear red on Wednesday. Not for ed, a person, but for education. And their Twitter is Red for Ed NC, and there's also a website. I'm on their advisory board. And one of the things that, most of us realized before May 16th happened was, changes aren't going to happen on May 16th, right? The legislature is going to come in, they're going to gavel in for their 15 minutes and then go into meetings, and, they're not going to fully fund schools that day. So we started thinking about the next day and all the days after that. So our dream, there's a couple of different groups working on things with regards to next steps, including the Durham Association of Educators. But we're trying to get teachers from every county to check in and participate in a North Carolina Teacher Congress. So I pulled this map from yesterday, actually, and that's counties where we have had teachers check in and sign up on the Red for Ed website. And you can see there's some patterns, like the far western state counties and the far eastern counties haven't checked in as much. We'll get them. But there's definitely some fear in a lot of those counties. And I actually have a friend in McDougall County, I think it is. She had gone to the rally and posted pictures, and her principal sat her down the next day and told her to take them all down and to never imply that their school didn't have everything they needed, which is pretty impressive considering I know that their school probably doesn't have everything they need. And I mean, it's not what's supposed to happen. And in fact, just as an aside, last Monday, I was on a Zoom call of statewide organizers for the march, and we were trolled and our call got shut down by someone who took over the call and was just showing lots of porn images on our Zoom, like took over the whole Zoom thing, and we had to shut it down. So there's definitely some people that don't want teachers to share their experiences and advocate for their students. So that all kind of brings us to the 16th, which there's some great pictures from us all walking down the street there. And Durham, again, being that we have some really great leadership and are willing to be leaders, we had over 1,000 teachers put in for a personal day for May 16th in advance, which a lot of people don't know. If teachers take personal days, we have to pay for our substitute teachers. That's like $50 to $75 a day. So there were 1,000 teachers willing to pay and, step out of their classroom, which, as you guys know, is no easy thing to do. And it basically caused a domino effect. And overall, 42 districts shut down in advance of May 16th. This is a really important day. This wasn't a very important day for North Carolina, and I hope that you guys felt that it was an important day, and we were looking at your social media and the news reports. There are a lot of people I met that day that have never done anything like this, like go to a rally. But there was just a lot of people who just couldn't figure out why people in Raleigh weren't doing the right thing anymore at the expense of their students. So does anyone have any questions about May 16th?
Was there ever a final kind of rough count of the attendance? Because I know that was up in the air.
Yeah, I mean, the conservative estimate was 20, and I think the larger end was 25,000. So between 20 to 25,000, which is more than we thought were going to show up, which is also I think it's just important in a state where things like this don't really happen on such large scale. I mean, we're close to Raleigh. We know that Moral Mondays take place or have in the past. And, you know, we've seen other things like that. But, I mean, there were busloads of teachers coming from Buncombe County, coming from the eastern part of the state. And, you know, and of course, you know, I put this picture in here to remind me also about some of the negative narrative that started. Most of the narrative around that day, of course, was very positive, coming off the heels of in West Virginia, Arizona, Kentucky, Oklahoma, all right to work states, right? But that one Union County representative, you know, called all the teachers union thugs. And this guy's sign, if I'm a thug, then the Union County man is a coward. You know, I think that just is really, as educators, you know, we're taught to diffuse like bullying situations. And I think it's really funny when, not funny, but sad, when elected officials say really mean things. You know, we saw that kind of throughout the country, like the guy in Kentucky who said, you know, was it the governor even, who said like, while the teachers were gone, all their students were doing drugs. Like, I mean, it's just kind of like, is that really, that's really what you're going to say? Like, first of all, that's not what's happening. And yeah, just the name calling turns into a funny dynamic, I think. So of course, with that, a lot of us are thinking about next steps, and I'm involved, like I said, with the Red for Ed Teacher Congress. There's a lot of next steps meetings I know that are happening next week for across the state, while the General Assembly is in their short session. I got a spreadsheet today that was all of the education bills that are going to be on the floor, and it's a lot, and a lot of them are kind of, you know, not that important in my mind, and some of them are important, and they're throwing out numbers that are going to seem really big at the time. I think they said they're going to provide $15 million for increased school safety. And that sounds like a lot of money, but $15 million for the entire state. We have about, you know, 100,000 students. That's not that much money. So just making sure people know what's happening is one of my big goals for this legislative cycle. So when I made this presentation for my wrap-up slide, I was kind of thinking of some emergent themes. I'm a science teacher, so I like emergent properties and themes. I think what I've learned about being an educator, not only the work I do in my classroom teaching my students, but advocating for my profession and others' professions, and for this, you know, this democratic institution called public education that I firmly believe in, is that it takes lots of groups and lots of connections. There's lots of ways to get involved. And our goal, no matter what group you're in, is to defend our schools and transform them. You know, I don't think anyone's saying that the public schools we have right now are perfect. Obviously, we don't have all the things we need. Definitely education on the national level is not perfect. But we don't, just because they're not working right now doesn't mean that they need to go away or be taken over. And hopefully that won't happen. So I have one last slide. Thank you so much. The hashtag for last week was "In This Together," which I think is a great hashtag. As you can see, it takes a lot of different people with different skills to, I think, advocate. And if any of you guys are interested or know people that are interested in getting a little bit more involved, I'm happy to steer them in directions and answer any questions you have. I just didn't think I could talk for half an hour, but I definitely just did.
Well, I have a question.
Go ahead, Diana.
Okay, Diana Phillips in Hillsborough. A few years ago, the General Assembly instituted a lottery with the proceeds to go to education, but they have been using that money to fund other parts of the state government. Have any of the teachers come up with an extended plan to make the legislators put that money into education?
Well, I'm sure the educators have a plan because we would like that money. Our school actually is getting a little bit of lottery money. It's only for infrastructure, which I also think is kind of something a lot of people don't know. And you have to apply like a grant to get it. But for the past several years, it has been just taken into the general fund, like you were saying. That is something that we would like changed, but on the top of our, that's not on the top of our list per se. But there's whole papers you can read about who are the people that are gambling, right? And who are the people that go to public school, and they're usually, low-income people are more, usually the ones that are going to have trouble gambling and spend money on things like that. And also under the guise that it's going to public education. And then those are the people that end up being hurt the most in the end. There's some interesting sociology behind that.
So you said the money from the lottery was only for infrastructure?
Yeah, that's the only thing we can use it for when we get it.
I think that needs to change.
I agree, for sure. I think the huge surplus we have, so for 6 years, they froze every state employee's salary, right? We didn't get like a COLA increase or anything like that. I used to work for the federal government, and every year we would get like 2.5%, 3%. 1 year in those 6, I got 1.5% pay increase, which, doesn't keep up with inflation by any means. So all those years that they were not providing pay increases, they banked away a lot of money, and we have a really big surplus. We're not in a recession anymore. And I think, if you read anything by the North Carolina Policy Watch, Chris Nordstrom is their like education policy money guru. And I think like he comes up with some scenarios to disperse the money that's in surplus right now. And it's just, it would be really, we could be in the top 25 again for education if they used some of the surplus even.
Does anybody else have any other questions?
This is the Gene Perry. I was just a little bit surprised that the teachers organization actually picked toward the end of the year for their big display, because I thought, I'm from New York, so like we know unions. That it would have been a little bit more impactful if it was in a more critical time. Well, it seems to me that the board and everybody sort of did a pseudo fold and sort of accepted it, and I think that sort of like dampened the impact. That was just my take on it.
Well, one thing to note is that our legislature is part-time, and they haven't been at work since February. Yeah. So last Wednesday was the first day they came back to work from February.
Uh-huh.
They'll be at work for about a month before they go back home.
Okay.
So it wasn't the best time, right? But I will say, there's a lot of rumblings about what might happen in August.
Yeah. I was extremely proud of both West Virginia and North Carolina. Like I said, I've been on many strikes, and the 30-some years I spent at Verizon with CWA and the other unions, both on the management side and as an employee. It's sorely needed. Teachers are woefully underpaid, and the fact that they're tied to the state and always beholden to the state when we're asking for a raise or some sort of, like you said, cost of living or whatever.
Yeah.
To me, it's a little disgusting.
Yeah, I mean, the old model of funding schools through property tax is proving not to work, right? I mean, if you go into any, I grew up outside of Philadelphia. We had great schools, everything we need. Go 30 minutes into Philly. I mean, the tax base is totally different, and that's kind of what we have if you look at Chapel Hill and Durham, right? Because also in Durham, there's a lot of property that is tax-free because it's a nonprofit. Duke University, right? They're a nonprofit, and they have some different tax clauses than someone who owns a house. But yeah, I think, and the Supreme Court just ruled, I don't know if you guys saw this, that, a couple years ago, they said businesses should be treated like individuals. But if a business hurts you, you can't sue them as if they are an individual. And I think we're coming into a really weird time for people to really come together. And I think the unity in teachers is going to be really important. I think it's also important to note that the majority of teachers, 80% in North Carolina, are females. And I think it's an important thing to note that the salary schedule, or kind of the way teachers have been treated for a long time, is it's been a very secondary career for women, right? Young women, and when they start a family, they no longer teach, they stay home, which is, there's no maternity leave for teachers or state employees. You have to use your sick days, and you get not many sick days. So I think hopefully even though it is at the end of the year, like you were saying, probably not the best time, but we have a couple summer months where people can really dig in and meet with people in their respective counties and really organize on a state level, hopefully.
Thanks so much, Mika. I have many, many questions, but we're at the top of the hour.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's fine. Thank you. We're really glad you're here tonight.
I'm gonna stop sharing,
okay.
And I can email you this PowerPoint.
Okay, great. And this is our virtual certificate.
Wow.
And hang on, let me put it on display so that it looks a little bit better. But I always do this wrong, you guys. Sorry. One day I'll figure it all out. Slideshow. Okay, there we go. Now it's going to look pretty. So.
Oh, thank you.
So it's our certificate of appreciation granted to you for imparting valuable insights and inspiration as our guest speaker this evening. So we thank you very much. And we can't give you a paper certificate, so you'll just have to take a quick mental image of this and know how much we value your participation in tonight's program. So thank you.
Thank you, guys.
As always, we close with the 4-way test. Rotary has a 4-way test of the things we think, say, or do. And I think we could say it all together tonight. I won't pick on anyone to lead us, but 4-way test of the things we think, say, and do. First, is it the truth?
Is it the truth?
Is it fair to all concerned?
Will it
build goodwill and better
friendships? And will it
be
be
beneficial to all concerned?
Thanks, everyone. You gonna say it, Kevin?
And that's Rotary for tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mika. Good night.
Good night,
Thank you
all.
so much, everyone.
Bye.